Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Jared here, and today we are going to be talking about The Lion King from 1994, directed by Rob Minkoff and Roger Allers, and it is the 32nd Disney theatrically released animated film about the story of one lion that returns to his kingdom to take his father's throne back from his evil uncle Scar. This is a film that is considered by many to be not only one of the greatest Disney animated films, period, but one of the greatest animated films of all time. And it is a movie that I did grow up with, like so many others my age. However, it was a few years into my childhood that I finally experienced this film and the other films in the franchise, such as The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, and Lion King 1.5, which I am a huge fan of. But The Lion King was a film that I watched constantly as a kid. I loved the music, the animation, and the story overall, and it was one that, like many, I connected with on a deeply emotional level. It was one that I put on constantly throughout my childhood, and it has stuck with me from that time. And because of that, I feel like I have seen this movie so many times that when I watch it, I don't necessarily see anything new, and each experience isn't as fresh anymore. And then that's ultimately why it kind of goes down on my list of Disney animated films. I love this movie. I think it is a fantastic film. But as I continue to watch it, I don't necessarily think it is a masterpiece. There are a few things in it that I will get into that I think lack in comparison to some of the other Disney films that I have talked about previously, especially things like The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. But nonetheless, this is one of the absolute greats in the Disney Renaissance and is worthy of all the praise that it gets. So to go into a little bit of detail as to what The Lion King ended up being, this was basically the B movie during the Disney Renaissance when Disney was focusing on Pocahontas. Pocahontas, for Jeffrey Katzenberg, was going to be their next big thing after Beauty and the Beast. It was going to get them Oscar attention. They were going to see this as one of the greatest achievements of animation. And so The Lion King was just kind of seen as this little small project that people actually left to work on Pocahontas. And as we know with Pocahontas, that movie ended up being critically mediocre and wasn't the big smash success that they were looking forward to. However, The Lion King a year prior ended up doing just that and has become a household name and is one of their most successful Disney animated films, period. This is one of their highest grossing animated films, and you can clearly see why. It connects you on a very deeply emotional level with its characters, its story, and music all together into one package. And I think that was what was lacking, a little bit of the humanity in Pocahontas, and why people connect to this film far more. And when this movie released, it introduced a whole lot of different techniques that I personally had never really seen in a Disney animated film at this point, especially after rewatching so many of these movies for these reviews on YouTube. But we have things such as slow motion during the fight scene with Scar and Simba, and then we have this focusing effect, especially in the beginning during the Circle of Life sequence, when we kind of zoom in and focus on these bugs on a branch. That was something that had never really been accomplished before. And if you watch the director's commentary for the film and even some videos on YouTube, you will see, just how big of an influence just modern filmmaking was on this film. There's a lot of moments in this movie that do feel very cinematic, like you are watching something actually being filmed. The only thing is, it was animated and then put into a computer to be displayed for us. And also, I can't talk about The Lion King without at least talking about William Shakespeare. Many people will point to, even the filmmakers themselves, point to Hamlet as being a huge influence on this story, particularly it being about a princely character who is returning home to take back his kingdom from his evil uncle. And you get a sense that there is something grander with this story. This is a huge film on one of the largest scales that Disney has ever done. You have the whole vastness of the African wilderness, and you see just the circle of life in particular, with those amazing scenes between Mufasa and Simba as he learns how to navigate this world and be the king that he needs to be, understanding everything is connected in this great circle of life. And that is ultimately what that song is really telling about. It shows that we are all connected through all walks of life, and we breathe the same air, and we are important in every aspect of life. And so I think that's what elevates The Lion King so much, is that it feels grand, it feels epic, and ultimately personal, not only to the animals on screen, but to us as people. And to populate the film, the movie gives us such fantastic and memorable characters, as well as their voice actors as well. We have James Earl Jones as Mufasa, who's been completely immortalized. We have Jeremy Irons as Scar, who is wonderful and villainous. We have Timon and Pumbaa, who are the comic relief of the film, and they're so much fun. The hyenas, everybody just gives so much gravitas to the film. They are so much fun, they're likable, and they really stick with you. These characters are memorable for a reason. They're not memorable because they're annoying. They are memorable because they're fun, lighthearted, and villainous in some of the best ways. And then if we move on to the music, we get Tim Rice and Elton John collaborating for this film, and they turned out a soundtrack that has stood the test of time, that people sing, hum, and enjoy to this day, to the point that this has gotten its own stage musical, which is so fantastic, and I really would love to see that stage musical one day. But their music is fantastic. Tim Rice already did such a good job collaborating with Alan Menken on Aladdin that him and Elton John really do make some magic here, with some really good songs that will get stuck in your head from beginning to end. And then we have things, of course, like Hakuna Matata, Be Prepared, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? But ultimately, I have to say that the best song, and one of the greatest Disney songs of all time, is The Circle of Life, which we have already discussed what that meaning is, what it means in the grand scheme of the creatures in the film and us as human beings, especially if you listen to Elton John's own rendition of this song. You will get a real sense of that. But I think it perfectly sets up the theme of the story from the very start of the film, and it's a great way to introduce us to the Lion King world, with beautiful animations set to this amazing song and that incredible iconic moment of Rafiki lifting up young Simba on Pride Rock. It is one of the greatest openings for a, not just an animated film, but a movie in general. I absolutely adore it, and that song is so perfect for not only starting the film, but bookending it as well. And then if you didn't think that the music could get any better, Tim Rice and Elton John did such a good job with the soundtrack of the movie with those songs. But then we have somebody else that joined the fray for this movie, and that is the fantastic Hans Zimmer, who is one of the greatest living composers for movies working today. He has done some incredible work with the Dark Knight trilogy and Pirates of the Caribbean and so many others. However, there's so much emotion and weight that is put into his music in this film. I will always remember the music that plays when Simba finally ascends to Pride Rock after defeating Scar. That music is, for my personal taste, the best piece of music in The Lion King, even more so than the music done by Tim Rice and Elton John. This is the true theme of royalty and ascending to the place you were meant to be from the start, because we see Simba go through a character arc from a very reluctant hero that kind of has been pampered his life, doesn't really accept responsibility, and then finally takes that responsibility to become the king he needs to be by the very end. It's wonderful. That music just really sticks with me. I remember when I was a kid just playing that scene over and over and over again because I love the music so much. And now it's at this point that I kind of want to discuss about some of the things that really kind of drag the film down. And I'll go into something that isn't like a big criticism of the film, but I will mention it nonetheless, and that is I'm not too big of a fan of Can You Feel the Love Tonight. It is a really good song. The way it's inserted into the film just kind of feels rushed and put together, because we have all of these songs throughout the film that are sung by our characters, and then we just have this random song that is played over Nala and Simba falling in love and enjoying each other's company. And it's not them singing it, it's just somebody, just some random voice singing to us, and it just doesn't carry any of the weight. And I think a lot of this has to do with they originally animated this movie for Timon and Pumbaa to sing this song, but Elton John was very upset with this decision, believing that they destroyed his big emotional romantic ballad. And so everything was changed, I think, to address this, and I think that's why we get this kind of random use of a song, because it ends up feeling like what they would ultimately do with Phil Collins' music when we get to Tarzan. It is a good song, I just don't think it fits with the rest of the movie, especially in the way it is done, with them not really even using it as a musical number at all. It's just kind of a song that plays over a scene with a little bit of Timon and Pumbaa singing at the very end to kind of end the scene. And then I ultimately want to get to my biggest criticism of the film, and that is Matthew Broderick. I like Matthew Broderick a lot. I defend him at times, however, I do not think that he was the right choice to play Simba in this film. He just kind of gives a very bland performance. And I think that Matthew Broderick has been criticized as being a bit bland in the past, with especially a lot of his delivery, but I think he's a very good and talented and fine actor. However, I just don't think he was the correct voice to play Simba. I don't really like how he performs the character at all, and it makes me just not care for Simba as much, which is sad because, the beginning of the film, I was really enjoying Simba and I really liked his character. But when you have such a bland voice acting performance, I just can't really connect to the character in the way that it was intended for me to. And it makes me just not interested in what he is trying to accomplish. I'm interested in what the character is trying to accomplish, but the voice performance is kind of negating that. And I think ultimately, as I said in the beginning, I watched this movie so many times as a kid, and rewatching it at this point, I think I've just kind of grown tired of The Lion King in a lot of ways with how people got tired of Frozen, just overexposing yourself to it to the point where you know it's a great movie, but you're just kind of tired of seeing it over and over. And I feel that is what has happened with The Lion King with me. I'm just a little bit burnt out. It is a great film. It is even a masterpiece for many, and I completely understand why it is often put as the greatest Disney animated film of all time, because it probably very much is. It's just not so much in my book. So ultimately, I'm going to give The Lion King an 8 out of 10. I don't think that it is a perfect film, but I do think it is a masterpiece of animation and has wonderful music, characters, and is incredibly enjoyable. I understand why people love this movie. I just wish I could rank it a little bit higher in my pantheon of Disney animation, but it is great nonetheless, and that should not be taken away from it at all. But guys, that is all I got for you. I hope you enjoyed this. I am looking forward to continuing these Disney reviews, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and stay positive.